Breaking news on the AM. President Donald Trump tests positive for the coronavirus along with his wife after a top White House official has been said to have tested positive for the disease earlier today. So that's why they got, like, I guess, an emergency test on the president and his wife, and they tested positive. They're starting their 14-day quarantine. Today's date is October 2nd of 2020. So they're going to be on the humbug for a good at least 2 weeks. My thoughts on that is I sincerely believe that if everyone tested as often as that White House official that tested positive, because as I understand, they move around, they're in government, they test once every 2 days or something like that, several times a week, something like that. I think if the entire world, or we could even just stick with the nation, United States, if we tested consistently every week, I believe 100 to 1,000% of positive results would be seen from there, which contributes to the theory that actually has a lot of backing behind it. The theory that maybe like 90 plus percent, 99 plus percent of people that are exposed to this do not even know they're exposed to it. They've done studies in here in New York where they take a little small sample of people, a little microcosm environment, and they just randomly test them. People going to the store and everything. They did this back in March or April, some shit like that, right? And the what they tested them for were the antibodies, because there's two types of things for this coronavirus COVID-19 thing. There's one to see if you're actively technically infected with the disease, and there's another one to see if at one point you have been infected, meaning that you have antibodies. Because if you were infected, the antibodies are kind of like a signature that's going to stay with you. They're not going to do anything to you, but they're proof. That's basically your receipt. So they tested people for receipts to see if they bought that disease, so to speak. You know what I mean? And from that little small microcosm, they were able to find that a high percentage of these random people tested positive for these antibodies, meaning they had the disease at some point. Vast majority of them probably didn't know the wiser. So basically, that microcosm, if you were to scale that, and they said something, I think 1 point something million New Yorkers in NYC in New York City. It basically suggested that 1.4, I think, million New Yorkers at that time had the antibody. So 1.4 million New Yorkers also probably had that stuff technically, and didn't know it. You know what I mean? And wrapping it all up in a nice little neat ball, it just goes to say that these are things that suggest that most people that get this technically don't know they got it. So if you're testing all the time, yeah, it's a decent chance that you're gonna run across this here thing and not even know the wise. I mean, look at the protests. That told me a lot right there. New York City, 30 plus thousand people congregating a day protesting the thing with George Floyd, right? And the positive rates of the coronavirus, they did not go up. They stayed around 1, 2%, and they just kept getting lower and lower. Even though you got all this intermingling, shouting, and everything in the protests, right? Why did the positive rates not go up? In support of the theory is because them people intermingling, they're part of that 1.4 million, which was probably even more at that time, maybe a few million in New York at the time of them protests that had the antibodies. Because if you have the antibodies, it's gonna offer you some protection where you can't catch that shit again. So you go to a protest, you got the antibodies because you were exposed to it, never knew the wiser, and next thing you know, you take a test. Yeah, it's gonna be negative. You know what I mean? If you take a test to see if you actively have the virus, it's gonna be negative because you already got the antibodies. You know what I mean? So yeah, but the main news: President Trump and his wife test positive for the virus. But the sciencey details. Now, granted, it's still a theory. He could, actually get sick or something. I don't know, but from what the science looks like, it's telling me, and science and common sense tells me that there's a 90+% chance, conservatively, a 90+% chance that he nor his wife will feel sick, nor the White House official that they potentially caught the thing from. So yeah, that's what's going on. So we'll just wait and see how it all turns out. Wish him the best.